One important consideration in map design is selecting the data layers that you want on the map. You want your map to tell a good story and you want it to make a good impression. So you can kind of think of these different layers as maybe a pecking order or a hierarchy of what is the most important thing on your map and what is less important. Or as in this example here, who are the lead players on your map? If you're trying to make a map of volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest, you want that to be the thing that really grabs the map user's attention. So in that case, which layers would have the supporting roles? Maybe things like counties and showing where population is or where the highways are. And maybe some elements don't even need to be in the map at all, such as where the rivers are. It really depends on what the message of your map is. If it's volcanic hazards, maybe the population is more important than where the rivers are. So that kind of leads to the question of, should you omit some data or leave some data off of your map? Of course, we have all this great data out there and we tend to want to use it because we have it. But there can be some issues associated with various sorts of data. For example, there could be privacy issues. There's all sorts of information out there on parcel owners and who they are and even how much they pay for their property, or where water tests were conducted on private wells, but is it right to put that on a map? It's kind of a question to consider. There might also be sensitive information, things that we don't want hurt or destroyed that could appear on a map, such as where fossil beds are or archaeological sites, or where pipelines or climate stations are, because people sometimes vandalize those. And we also have to be aware of unintended consequences of putting things on a map. For example, if we made a map of property values and showed where the faults were, it could be that people think those faults are going to be active even if they aren't. It might be less likely to buy property near an inactive fault line, which could actually decrease the price of the property. Another important thing about how to kind of set the stage for putting these layers on a map is this idea of cartographic generalization. And this is basically simplifying a data set so that it performs better on the map. And we can do all sorts of different things in order to basically generalize a map. Sometimes we reclassify things, as in this example here. We start out with all these different classes and we make it into less classes because it makes our map simpler. Sometimes we take a bunch of smaller features and we kind of just outline the area where all those smaller features occur. That would be called aggregating. Sometimes we simplify lines by just taking out some of the nodes or vertices. And we can do all these sorts of things in order to cartographically generalize our map and make what's most important stand out by making these other things that might be less important kind of fade off into the background. Another thing that's important with our map design is if we want to include a map grid. So the map grid can typically be graticule lines, which are just basically longitude and latitude lines, as are shown in this example here. These would be the lines of latitude, these curved lines here, and these would be the lines of longitude, these lines splaying out in different directions here. And by this we would know that this would be a conic map projection. So latitude and longitude can sometimes be our grid, but we can also put XY coordinates on a grid and use it as a grid. And this might be like our UTM, Universal Transverse Mercator coordinates after we projected the data from geographic coordinates into UTM coordinates. But sometimes we just put an index along the edge of the map so that we can easily find something, for example, at E3, just by going along column E and row 3, and then knowing that whatever feature we're looking for is somewhere in this area here. So when we finally get to designing the map, we want to include all of these different sorts of map elements. And these can include things like the locator map, which shows us where in the United States this map is. It includes the title of the map, which should be descriptive and tell us about what's on the map. It includes a scale bar, a legend telling us what all the different symbology on the map means, a north arrow, which we usually tend to make a very minor bit player. We really kind of like for that to recede into the background so it's not the first thing to notice on a map, the neat line around the map area, any sort of citations about where the data is coming from, and then sometimes some sort of graphic or photo as well.